lot of crypto has just focused on these very arcane, like infrastructure type things where people are just building very theoretical infrastructure for very theoretical use cases, optimized around very theoretical edge cases, where their theoretical universe becomes reality. And I think it's kind of like in academia, where basically people spend so much time living in their heads, they just kind of forget that they still live in the real world. And Dogecoin is very much in touch with the real world.
Welcome to the ATX DAO Podcast, the hub for exploring the forefront of blockchain technology in Austin's Web3 community. We connect you with innovators within ATX DAO and beyond as we venture into the world of decentralized technology. So crack open a beer and join us for a front row seat to learn about the innovations and trends shaping our digital future. This is the ATX DAO Podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the ATX DAO Podcast. We are excited to talk about Dogecoin today. And with us today, we have a couple of guests. We have Vardo and Rashad, who are both DAO members. Welcome to the show, guys.
Glad to be here.
Hello.
Yeah, glad to have you with us, man. Sorry for the technical difficulties early on, but I think we're all set now.
What technical difficulties?
Nothing. Everything went smooth and seamless. It was amazing.
That's the mindset.
That's exactly right. Well, cool, guys. Well, we're going to keep it pretty informal, but before we kind of get into like some of our conversation, I know y'all have both been on the show before, but maybe just do a quick intro, kind of tell folks some of the stuff that y'all are, your expertise, things you're working on. Vardo, you want to start us off with some of the stuff you're doing with Maestro?
Yeah, sure. Well, I been building Maestro for almost exactly 3 years. We're a UTXO focused infrastructure API provider, and we started with Cardano initially back in January 2022, and then we expanded earlier this year into a lot happened until then, but we decided this year to expand to Dogecoin and Bitcoin as like a more complete multi-chain UTXO API provider. And turns out that was a good move because there's a lot of excitement and maturity happening around Bitcoin, Dogecoin, DeFi, and Maestro is turning out to be like in the heart of it, helping support a lot of projects with their data. Indexing UTXOs are really hard, doing it at scale, and making it where like these chains, people building on these chains can have snappy, responsive DeFi products. We play a really important role in that. So there's a lot of responsibility, but it's also really exciting to be able to support these projects.
Very cool. Yeah,
such as Rashad's project.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a good transition to Rashad. I would love you to share a little about what you're doing. So y'all were with DoggyFi. So maybe share a little bit with.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rashad. I helped co-found DoggyFi. We are basically the first AMM on Dogecoin. We basically deployed Uniswap for DRC20s and Dunes on Dogecoin. But yeah, it's a place where people can come in. They can trade like their favorite tokens, whatever it might be. They can have fun. It's easy, and it's actually on the Dogecoin L1. But yeah, that's really what DoggyFi is all about. We're about like Doge and just having a good time.
Very cool. Yeah, and I've really liked what y'all have been doing too. So I've been following the project for a while. So got it from the very start with getting the test set going and all of that. So it's really a smooth process y'all have, very similar. If folks like Uniswap, it's got a similar feel to it, but on Doge, which is awesome that you're bringing that over there.
Thank you.
Very cool. So a lot of stuff with Doge has been in the news lately. So we'll talk a little about that. But one of the tweets that I just saw, I think yesterday, so I don't know how y'all feel about Raoul Pal, but he was commenting on how Doge has outperformed Bitcoin significantly for the last several years. So exciting that y'all are building there. I know you're rooting for Bitcoin as well, Vardo, because you're building for that too. But yeah, so just talk about the kind of the state of Doge, like to kick us off. Like, what are y'all seeing in the Doge space right now, not only price related, but just innovation wise, which obviously y'all are both building there?
There is so much innovation happening in the space right now. And it's actually really exciting to see. I'll just admit it right here. Like before I even got involved with DoggyFi, like it didn't occur to me how much you can actually do, not only on Bitcoin, but also Dogecoin. From be it ordinals to tokens such as Dunes or DRC20 to be it L2s such as Doge OS or QED's Gross 16 provers or Lakia. Like there is just so many different things right now being built on Doge. Network just seems like it has so much utility to scale further and further and further. From our perspective, I don't think it would be shocking even if Dogecoin was one day used as a payments layer. And we're basically seeing the early, I think, bedrock of what can be built on Doge in terms of just, decentralized finance and payments and all those other things on the L1. And it's just, for me, this is just crazy because it's like this thing that started as a literal joke is now becoming not just a thing for memes, but honestly just a very serious payment layer. And it's just really excited to see this progression happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still waiting on my first payment on X. And so those that don't know, in X, you can actually set up your Doge wallet in your X account to get paid there. And no one's tipped me yet, so I'm still waiting on that. But
we'll do it.
You'll do it?
Yeah, of course. How much you want?
However much you think.
All right.
Awesome. But Varda, what are you seeing in the innovation space there? So obviously you, as an API provider, y'all are probably working with folks on that as well. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I would be able to cover that Rashad really didn't touch on. But I think the fascinating part of Doge is that so much of our industry is about, it's not just like solving technical problems, it's the social side of it, right? Like social engagement, the economics around it, kind of natural human kind of processes. And all of that kind of has to come together for a successful blockchain or crypto project or an ecosystem. You know, you can't just like have a very brilliant technical solution. You need to have like engagement and like something that people seek. And I think Dogecoin is fascinating because it's like, there are like, you know, better blockchains out there in terms of TPS, let's say, right?
Yep.
But the fact that there's so much adoption and so much love for, you know, the fact that it was initially a joke, then now because of that, it's built so much momentum. And as a result, likely in the coming year, you know, the L1 of Doge will improve. Like we might see Taproot on Doge eventually, right? And even things that are unique to Doge that Bitcoin won't have.
Yep.
And it's seriously possible that in the next year, the L1 protocol of Doge will move faster and improve faster than Bitcoin, right? You know, we talk a lot about like Opcat to enable ZK rollups on Bitcoin. We might get that on Dogecoin beforehand because it's so much easier. It's so much more of an accessible chain.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I mean, we're building so much on the L1 as it is right now. So imagine unlocking these things for future builders, you know, we can't even imagine what's going to be possible. And as API providers, for us, it's like amazing set of opportunities. You know, as innovations happen, we'll have to improve our APIs and have more infrastructure. So Doge will always be with Maestro for the foreseeable future. Awesome. And Maestro will be with Doge as well.
Awesome.
Two-way street.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense too, because I mean, Bitcoin, I think obviously enhancements happen to Bitcoin as well, but I think a lot more debate probably happens if you're trying to make a change to the Bitcoin protocol versus something else. So,
well, if what happens is if what Rashad is saying happens, right? Like it becomes a payment layer, then it's going to have to evolve and improve. There's going to be a lot more incentive. You know, if Bitcoin like doubles, triples down on the store of value gold narrative, and Dogecoin goes towards the payment people's currency narrative, then you're just going to have more scalability that's going to have to be built into that network.
Yep.
Whereas if Bitcoin, like there isn't that demand as much, it's just, you know, there'll be scaling layers and layer twos and stuff, which is fine. But I think in terms of the L1 innovation and like movement and change, it's more likely that we'll see it progress more rapidly on the Dogecoin side.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense.
I think that's happening right now, but I definitely, that's what it's looking like.
For sure.
Would you agree?
No, I mean, for sure. I think Doge is already far more scalable for these types of transactions in the Bitcoin layer. And I think both Bitcoin and Dogecoin have their place, right? Bitcoin, I think, has its place fundamentally as a store of value. It's kind of very slow to change. It only changes when it's absolutely strictly necessary, and people will spend eons debating things before they implement changes. And I think that's, you know, a feature, not a bug, right? Because if you're going to park your money somewhere, theoretically, for let's say the next 50 years, you want to know that the rules aren't going to change under your feet. And, you know, that's why Bitcoin, I think, has been a much better store of value than, say, something like Ethereum, right? Dogecoin, however, is an inflationary currency. In fact, its inflation follows a linear curve. It has, you know, effectively no supply cap and has a block on average every minute, right? So this is a very much different animal that we're dealing with here. And the question is, okay, what is a blockchain like this actually useful for? Like the meme of a Doge, I think it's like the OG meme. It's, you know, the fact that it became successful as it did, given that it derives its value from the meme of the dog, doesn't, shouldn't shock anyone. Like, dogs have been cute and popular for thousands of years. This isn't a new thing. With that being said, like, Doge scaling, it might have to scale, but we'll see. Block space is limited. Dogecoin is not. So the cost to do something could go up significantly depending on how many transactions you're trying to push through or what you're trying to push through. Transactions, if we make an analogy, for example, to Ethereum, the whole idea of a rollup is batching a bunch of transactions and executing them at once. So just at a high level, that's what that really is. So if we're doing something similar on Dogecoin, like, for example, we'll take QED's approach of like ROS16 provers, do some computation elsewhere, prove the final result is valid on the L1, right? There are many different scaling solutions there. I think that need to scale the L1, though, is actually quite far off. At least from what we're seeing, the level of compute on Dogecoin is still extremely competitive compared to other chains, extremely competitive compared to other UTXO chains. I can't come out on Cardano, but you can maybe speak more on that. And I think it can actually handle a significantly large number of transactions at the L1 layer before we need to start convoluting L2s.
Yeah, I think, that's also the case for Bitcoin. I think that we still haven't, for people that don't know, in the last approximately year and a half, people are building very serious DeFi applications on L1 for both Bitcoin and Dogecoin. Like, one of them sitting right across from me. We're seeing more and more that there's more innovations to be made on the L1s directly. So on the Bitcoin side, we're seeing where the only competitive scalable L1s are leveraging the mempool very heavily. Like, everything in this moment is happening on the mempool. So people are chaining transactions, they're predicting blocks based on fee rates, right? And there's still no consensus on what is the best way to use the mempool of Bitcoin. And we don't know when that's going to end. We might just continue to innovate for a while and scale to thousands of transactions per second just by in a very clever way, leveraging the mempool. And that's, there's so much room for that on Dogecoin as well. We haven't really heavily leveraged the mempool of Dogecoin because, it's 1 minute block time instead of Bitcoin's 10-minute average block time. But once there's enough adoption of Dogecoin and you have thousands of applications, with millions of users trying to pack transactions into blocks, people are going to, just like Bitcoin, are going to try to figure out how to innovate around the mempool. So yeah, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a while before we might even have to change the L1.
Yeah.
But we should be open. And if we were to change the L1, I think Dogecoin will change much more easily than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing. That just shows how much faster things are moving on Dogecoin in that respect.
Very cool. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm interested in kind of what you mean by leveraging the mempool for what they're building. What does that actually look like?
Yeah, pretty much every blockchain protocol has what's called a mempool, which is a temporary place in the node where transactions are living before they get put into a block and then the block proposed to the network. Every node in, let's say, Bitcoin and Dogecoin, every one of these nodes has their own mempool, and that mempool is, I like to call it a block, a purgatory, where there's a bunch of transactions that have been submitted for whatever reason, but those transactions haven't officially been added to the history of the blockchain. They haven't been confirmed, in other words. And so you can leverage the mempool. You can leverage these pending states of these transactions to make decisions about your next transaction, right? Rashad can give you actually a very specific example of on their decks how that would work. But in a general sense, you can just use the fact that things are pending to predict or make the next transaction before that thing has been confirmed.
Interesting.
And so instead of waiting 1 minute, you could wait only a few seconds before initiating the next transaction.
Very cool.
Why don't you give a specific example of that?
So one thing I just wanted to share before that, there's a really cool mempool visualizer out there that, so when I was in school, my professor showed it to us, and you can actually see a visual of all the transactions and how much of the block space they're taking, and it's very relaxing to watch. So I'll link it in. Yeah, well, because you can just see it all happening. The blocks are all moving around, and something's coming in, and these ones are more likely to get confirmed. It's actually really a neat visual.
Yeah.
So, anyway, when I first saw it, I would just leave it on my screensaver and just watch blocks being formed on Bitcoin, which is really cool. But anyway, Rashad, you were going to share some of the stuff there.
Like with mempool stuff, well, mempool, let's make a little bit of a distinction here, right? So mempool is basically anyone can submit a transaction to mempool. Doesn't mean that the transaction is going to be valid. Doesn't mean that it's going to get actually included in the next block.
Exactly.
Right. What's actually included in the next block is determined by a variety of factors. One of those being the network fee included, right? If you are a miner and you get the opportunity to pick the next block mined, you're obviously going to pick the transactions with the highest fees. That maximizes your fee reward from the next block. And, generally this idea of MEV is enshrined in most blockchains. Now, with, respect to Doge, in terms of predicting the next transaction, if you have knowledge of the full mempool, then you could potentially predict what the next block's going to be. There are a few issues with that, though. And I think one of the biggest things, and this is actually a problem that Ethereum has, if we can, maybe make a slight tangent, is basically the propagation of those transactions across the network, right? Or block propagation. So Ethereum has this whole thing of proposal builder separation. I might butcher the explanation a little bit here, but it basically works like this at a high level, right? I'll start by giving you the premise of a problem. So when you submit a transaction to the blockchain, right? Let's say I submit a transaction with a specific fee to the blockchain and I say, I want to have this included in the next block, right? I'm just attaching a fee that I think will be valuable and get it to the next block. Someone else could potentially front run my transaction by submitting another transaction with a higher fee, right? And perhaps they could do it on a node that I don't have knowledge of. If I never see that transaction, I could actually basically act without ever actually having known that it exists. So unless, all this mempool data is synced on your node, you're actually not going to know that actually happened, right? And, it kind of brings in this whole idea of private order flow, which in Ethereum is basically this issue where, certain block builders can basically get better MEV by having access to private order flow, or basically, people pushing trades to specific nodes, basically where you can say hey, here's this batch of transactions that's going to get you a higher fee. No one else knows about it and it gets you a more valuable. And, I think this is not going to be an issue that's unique to just Ethereum. I could see that very well happening on Doge, right?
Well, it's already happening on Bitcoin. You're talking about sniping, essentially, right?
Essentially. Well, sniping has this... So if I understand it at a high level, right, and I might butcher this explanation a little bit, but at a high level, Bitcoin has this thing called replace by fee, which basically lets you replace a transaction in the mempool by submitting a transaction with a higher fee. And so basically, if you have a PSBT that's been pushed to the mempool where it's not going to go through because it's missing certain inputs, you can actually pull it down, add your inputs to spend it. Someone else can pull it down, put higher inputs, sniping your ability to make the sale or the mint. And, a good friend of mine actually had a very bad experience trying to both buy and sell Promethean when that was the thing on Magic Eden earlier this year. So, on Dogecoin, it actually isn't as much of an issue because we don't have replace by fee. But with respect to timing of transactions, it could still potentially be an issue. So for example, if you know that a big trade's about to come up in the next block, you could potentially spam the mempool by pushing a bunch of transactions with fees to try and get the other transaction not included, to basically get your orders in first before someone else's order changes the price.
That's precisely sniping. No?
Well, no. So if I'm changing the price in order to benefit myself for a trade, I'd say that's actually a little bit more analogous to a sandwich attack versus the other one is, actually replacing the actual transaction.
Right. Okay.
Right? Because, for example, let's say I know, if I can make the analogy to Uniswap. Let's say I know, for example, you're going to buy X token in the next block, right, at Y price. And I say, okay, I'm going to bid a higher fee so I can make sure I buy X token first at Y plus epsilon greater than 0, or at the current price. And then I get my thing in first. And then once I know I have the tokens, I immediately turn around and then sell it to you. So instead of buying at Y price, you end up buying at Y plus epsilon. If epsilon is greater than the fee, I pocket that. On Dogecoin, that could potentially become an issue, but I don't think we're at scale there for that to actually be a real issue. Sniping isn't going to be an issue in Dogecoin right now because we don't have replace by fees. And I also think but
also the blocks just aren't that packed yet.
They aren't that packed yet, right?
And also you have faster settlement. You have 1 minute settlement.
There's faster settlement. You have less time to do, the search basically. So you need to basically get more data in less time, right? If you can't find the opportunity fast enough, you're not going to be able to do it. That's just, that's just a constraint that everyone has.
And the fact that Dogecoin is inflationary and the fees are cheap, like there's less incentive to do what he described, I think, right? Like a lot of times there's an arbitrage opportunity there. But if the arbitrage is going to land you like, all this hard work to like replace, if there was RBF and you were able to do that, or if you like sandwich attack, if it's going to make you like 10 cents, it's not really worth the energy that you put in to do that, right? Or whatever, like the code you wrote for it. Whereas in Bitcoin, it's like if you arbitrage like 0.01 Bitcoin, like that's a lot of money, right? So if there's a lot of room, to your credit, a lot of room yet for there to go before people really start to do that on Dogecoin. But the answer to your question earlier, it's just kind of what the mempool does essentially is like enables a fee market on these chains, right? It allows for people to prioritize their transactions based on the fee that they've used for that transaction. And miners, like he said, are incentivized to select the transactions when they are able to propose a block to the network. They're selecting transactions based on fee rate. They might have other incentives there, which is interesting, is like they might have a partnership with someone that's submitting transactions like a Coinbase or an exchange. We're like, okay, we're not going to make as much from the fees, but we're going to prioritize transactions from, I don't know, Coinbase. I'm not saying Coinbase does this, but let's just as a big exchange, right? Yeah. Because we have a partnership with them. So there's like those types of things that are happening on Bitcoin that are, I don't think, nowhere near yet for it to be happening on Dogecoin, from what I understand.
Interesting. Very cool. That's super interesting. So let's talk a little bit about what y'all are building now too. So I know y'all are working together on some things, but who wants to start with kind of some of the stuff that you're building? So let's dig into DoggyFi a little bit.
I mean, we built a DEX, right? It's a place where people can come in and they can trade tokens. And it's really simple. You connect your wallet. It can be MyDoge or MetaMask. You make a trade and then you get the token.
Yeah. So who made that snap for MetaMask?
Well, there was a lot of help from many people, but I was, including our lead engineer, Mac, who's a very talented dev, but that was also me as well.
Yeah, no, it's pretty slick. So I added it to my MetaMask just recently, and it works pretty slick. It's nice not to have to change extensions, and it looks really good, guys.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
What are you guys using under the hood for that, if you don't mind me asking? Is it like, okay, it's a secret. All right.
It's a secret. I mean,
is it like, is it like some extension of MyDoge, or is it like you guys built it like the connector?
Well, how we actually connect to MetaMask, they just provide like a library for that. It's TypeScript.
Oh, so it's like that side of it's like pretty easy. It's just,
yeah. I mean, like, we're also like, using some indexing services from Maestro, which has been extremely helpful. I mean, Vardo's been extremely helpful for getting, that stuff built out, I think.
Hey, I didn't say that. You said that.
Hey,
I didn't say that.
Vardo's doing so long for the say. I'm like,
no, I didn't say it. You said it. I'm just saying.
We are. I mean, we do need indexing services because, the reality is this like indexing is hard and expensive and costly, and there's a shit ton of optimization involved. And Maestro's been a very good indexing provider.
Well, we wouldn't be around if we didn't have applications that needed us at scale. Like our customer, like the user success is our success. Like if we don't have API volume, like it doesn't matter how amazing our indexer is. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's been really cool working with DoggyFi. Like they're also, what I like about your team, and whatever, I don't give a shit, kissing your ass, I don't give a fuck. But if it's been so great working with their team because they're super like in touch with what's happening in Dogecoin.
Yeah.
And just like the crypto world in general, but specifically Dogecoin. Every time I talk to Rashad or Ash, they're like very in touch with like the new cutting edge, like, or like even like degen, quote unquote degen stuff, the really edge stuff people are thinking about in crypto. And it's just, as API providers, we're so busy building tools and like trying to build really performant software. We don't have as much time to go into like the deep inner worlds of like degen world or whatever. And so these guys really help us understand where to take our platform.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. Like not only understanding like the innovations in tech, but also what's the culture. Exactly. And being connected to that. So I had a chance to tune in on a couple of y'all's spaces, sometimes in incognito mode.
Good choice.
But it definitely is like an interesting culture within the Doge space too. I think main thing I would define it by is fun. But I don't know how y'all would describe kind of some of the vibes of Dogecoin versus other things. Obviously, like Bitcoin maxis have a whole other ethos to them. But yeah, how would you describe kind of the vibes of Doge?
Definitely a lot more depraved. And here's the thing, jokes aside, Dogecoin is not here to try and take itself seriously like Bitcoin. And I think that's actually a good thing, right? People can come on Doge and they can make jokes about, pardon my French, but like poop, cum, and all these other like dumb topics. Yeah. And, it's childish. It's like something like some of these jokes are like something like an 8-year-old middle school I would find funny. But the reality is, like, I think all of us are like, kids inside. Like, all of us have a child inside. All of us like to make these jokes. And like, it's just a place where you can just kind of come in and have fun. And, a lot of these meme tokens are basically just frankly that. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look at pump.fun. So it's just a place where people can just kind of have this expression. But it's not just also the, 8-year-old middle school jokes. People are also doing real things on Doge too. People are trying to make real communities to drive real change, be it, for their businesses or locally or wherever they're at. People are, artists are basically finding a new way to find revenue in Doginals, which are NFTs on Dogecoin. So there's also a lot of like real stuff happening there too. And like Dogecoin is just a place that's accepting and allows for it. Dogecoin is not trying to be like some political ideologue. Their Dogecoin is just trying to be Dogecoin and have fun. It's kind of like air. It just wraps all of us.
Yeah, it's definitely that. I think there's something deeper though. Like, what I've noticed going into like spaces with these guys or like with Alex from My Doge, for example, is I've noticed there's like a rebelliousness to it. And it's like a common thing always, they don't trust like super like powerful government authorities, for example, And I think with Bitcoin going, this is a really good thing for us in the industry that Bitcoin's become so mature. So many institutions have adopted it. Nation states want it, right? Like, it's become a very serious thing. Like, if you don't have it, as a country, you don't have as much negotiating power at the geopolitical table. And I think Dogecoin to like tip the scale on that and like keep the rebelliousness and the edginess of crypto is very important, and that's something I've always noticed. They keep that common thing going every time I hear them in a space, for example.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I mean, there's something to it, just like whether it's Doge or just like meme coin communities in general, like building something because it's fun and becomes useful is kind of a special thing. Like, it doesn't have to always be like a serious thing. It's just like, hey, I built it because I thought it'd be cool and was interested in it. So,
and that's the thing I love about Doge. And I think a lot of people in Doge are really just focused, especially us, like really focused on consumer first applications. I think a lot of crypto, and I think this is where Ethereum has made a lot of missteps and why I think it's also underperformed this cycle as well, is basically a lot of crypto has just focused on these very arcane, like infrastructure type things where people are just building very theoretical infrastructure for very theoretical use cases, optimized around very theoretical edge cases, where their theoretical universe becomes reality. And I think it's kind of like in academia, where basically people spend so much time living in their heads, they just kind of forget that they still live in the real world. And Dogecoin is very much in touch with the real world.
Yeah, dude, that's such a great way to put it. There's a lot of, I like the way what you described, there's a lot of solutionism in crypto. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like you guys probably kind of know what I mean by solutionism. It's like the cart before the horse. Like you're solving problems for problems that don't really exist, or like we don't really agree that they're problems. Yeah, there's a lot of that happening in the space, whether it be Ethereum or Solana or Cardano, wherever. Like, I think Dogecoin is, because it's just like some joke that someone created and it just took off, and then the world's smartest, richest guy like fell in love with it. Because of that, it's like, it's just raw and just, it is what it is. And seeing people build around it now, build around that, is crazy. Whereas like billions upon billions were invested into solutionism on these other chains. Yet they're not ever going to see the adoption that Dogecoin has by just being, just a thing that people love,
Yeah, kind of takes the pressure off of it, right? Like if you have this really cool tech, okay, I got to find what it can be used for, versus you are part of this community, you want to build something cool and you think of a solution for it. So I like it. Very cool. So I want to talk a little about other tokens on Doge as well. So not necessarily specific ones, but so y'all, as a DEX, y'all have a lot of different tokens that go through there. Like what are the different sub communities within Doge?
Sure. So I'll predicate the statement real quick. If I mention any specific tokens, I am not making an endorsement. Always do your own research, and none of this is financial advice.
Same here. Same here.
Yes. Same to you.
With that being said, Dunes is definitely, we're seeing Dunes on the exchange, but Dunes is definitely still pretty new. We recently had someone come in and they listed fries with token, for example, which is, you're basically just a play on a whiff, but it's like a little cute Doge with like holding fries. He works at McDonald's. Right? It's ridiculous, right? But, it's fun. And, some people might resonate with that and potentially want to buy the token. And if they do want to buy it, DoggyFi is a place where they can do that. DRC20s are still where most of the value is. For example, Doge obviously is a huge token. That's where most of DRC20 volume is. It's like, last time I checked, somewhere around 20 million market cap. And, there's other great tokens too. Like we recently had Kinu come in and list. Kinu is actually a really interesting token because they taught me something that I didn't know. If you dig through like libobj, something like that, through like the Dogecoin GitHub, the smallest unit of a Dogecoin, it's not a sheep, it's Koinu, right? And Billy M2K, the creator of Dogecoin, basically actually confirmed that on Twitter, basically responding, yeah, it's, someone's like, did you know it's not sheaves? It's like, yeah, it's definitely not sheaves. And he was responding to the person saying that it was Koinu. And, I didn't know that. I was like, what? It's actually called Koinu? So some of these communities are actually educational. Like I just been calling it sheaves forever. I'm like, dang, I feel stupid now.
How is it broken down? Do you know? Do you remember?
Well, it's 1/100 millionth is the smallest unit, right?
Okay.
So 1e to 1e9, right?
Okay. The fundamental unit is the Keanu?
Koinu.
Okay. Instead of, we call it Sheeb, but it's not.
It's not sheep. I straight didn't know this. I was like, oh, I learned something new. Cool. But yeah, those are places we're seeing volume right now. If anyone else obviously has a token they want to come in and list, like obviously come talk to us. Let's see what we can do. There's definitely a lot of other communities out there that are making dunes. A good friend of mine, Math, he has a token like Department of Government Efficiency, literally called Doge. I don't know if this dune's going to do well, but if there was ever a dune that's going to do well, that sounds like the one. I don't know. There's just so many people building cool things. And I think, we're going to see something really exciting happen within the next 12 months.
Very cool. Awesome. So Varderes, so on the other side of it, so you work with a lot of people that are building other like technologies, things like that. What are some of the things that you're seeing in the Doge space?
Well, in the last 2 weeks since Trump got elected, we've seen hockey stick API volume increases, mostly coming from Rashad's team, DoggyFi and my Doge wallet, and a few other projects like Doge Pond, and there's a bunch of like smaller projects that are just like trying things and building new things. So we're just seeing like rapid increase of API volume from the Dogecoin side. I'm not even exaggerating when I say, when you look at the API volume over time per day, it's a hockey stick. And and literally since the election.
Yeah. I mean, the Department of Government Efficiency is...
Well, that was officially announced.
Yeah.
That the fact that that's a thing, this is weird coming from someone that like is an engineer and like studied physics, and I want to get to like the heart of things, like I have a fucking infra company. Of all the things I could have done to make money, I decided to build an infra. It's the hardest thing with like potentially lowest returns, potentially high returns, but whatever. It's one of those things where I was like, it's best not to try to like rationalize what's happening here and just like let it be and like embrace it. This whole like Doge government thing with Elon and Vivek, and the fact that Dogecoin's like becoming so popular, and it's all kind of just like this hodgepodge of like amazing things that are happening that I can't make sense of. I just left it as like, I can't make sense of that, and just like fully embrace it. Like the right of mid curve thing. Just be on the right side and look towards. Don't be like the rationalist in the middle and you'll get fucking screwed over. So that's how I'm approaching it. I know that didn't really help answer your question, but that's giving me an ability to sleep at night. So
yeah, there's so many choices to make. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, awesome. So guys, before we wrap up, just wanted to kind of give a little bit of shout out to like if folks want to get more involved in what you're building. Vardo, if you want to start first with Maestro, say if somebody's building on Doge or Cardano or Bitcoin, how do they get connected with you and the Maestro team?
Well, gomaestro.org is our landing page. From there, you can go to our developer documentation directly. You can go to our dashboard and log in, and then those will easily show you how to start using the APIs and other developer tools. So we also have a Discord server that you'll see there, our X. You can use those to reach out to us for help, to whether that be like how to use the API or request new features for new APIs. We'll be immediately available to respond. And then in terms of the chains, yeah, we have a lot of different services and APIs for the different chains. Yeah, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Cardano, and then Arch Network as well. So Arch Network is a scaling layer for Bitcoin, and they provide seamless scaling for Bitcoin, where you don't even have to leave your Bitcoin wallet. You just connect directly to Arch without bridging any assets, without moving to a new wallet. So we also support them, and they actually just recently launched the first dApp, Saturn, a Bitcoin DEX on testnet launched, and it uses Arch. So, and it's underneath the hood is using Maestro for the data. So there's a lot happening. We're going to continue to go multi-chain, focus heavily on UTXOs. But that's where we're at right now.
Very cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And listeners, if you are interested in learning more about Arch Network, we do have an episode, a few episodes back, so we'll link it in the show notes.
You have an episode about Arch?
We did.
Hell yeah, I didn't even know.
Yeah, so we had them on maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago.
Cool.
So yeah, so good guys, and excited about what they're building too.
Nice.
So very cool. And then Rashad, so DoggyFi, how did we get connected with DoggyFi?
Well, we have a Discord. I would encourage everyone just to start there. Like if you go to @Doggy DOGGY_FI on Twitter, we have our Discord basically pinned there. If you also go to Inspect-A-Woof, like inspect the deck, but Inspect-A-Woof on Twitter as well. I also have a Discord pin there. If you go to our website, DoggyFi.xyz, we also have a Discord link there. Find that link, click it, and join the Discord. That's by far the best way to just get in touch with us. Other than that, our DMs are open. You can DM the DoggyFi official account. You can also DM the Inspect-A-Woof account. You can come to our morning spaces, which we host on most mornings, and just literally talk to us. So there's lots of ways. Pick your favorite medium.
Yep. No, love it. Yeah, both y'all do some really good spaces. So definitely would encourage you to join either the Maestro or the DoggyFi spaces as well. So very cool. And then last thing before we close out, how do they get connected with each of you personally?
I am on X @Varderes_crypto, which I'm sure will be linked because people have never heard of the name Varderes.
Yes, we will absolutely link it.
VARDERES_crypto. That's me on X.
Awesome. And then Rashad?
On Twitter, I am Rashad0101. You can just reach out to me there if you want to just reach out to me personally.
Awesome. Very good. Well, it's been fun, guys. Thanks for joining.
Nipple twist. No,
right.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the ATX DAO Podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. To learn more about ATX DAO, visit us at atxdao.com and follow us on X, Farcaster, and LinkedIn @ATX DAO. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.